Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Correct Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1992 psycho-thriller titled Single White Female. Now, Single White Female, it runs for an hour and 47 minutes long. It is directed by Barbet Schroeder, and the script was done by Don Roos based on the novel SWF Seeks Same by John Lutz. The score was done by Howard Shore. The cinematography was done by Luciano Tovoli, and the editing was done by Lee Percy. And the stars of the movie are Bridget Fonda, Jason Leigh, Steven Weber, Peter Friedman, Steven Tobolowsky, and Francis Bay. Now, Single White Female is about a software designer named Allison Jones, played by Bridget Fonda, who kicks her boyfriend Sam Rawson, played by Steven Weber, to the curb after having discovered that he's been having secret affairs with his ex-wife. Desperate into finding a roommate to help her out financially, she brings in a frumpy bookstore employee named Hetty Carlson / Ellen Besh, played by Jason Leigh, to fill the voids, and before you know it, they become the best of friends. But when Sam tries to reconcile with Allison, Hetty's sanity becomes dead as vengeance becomes her priority by trying to keep them apart, even if it leads to murder as a way to protect her from getting her heart broken again. You see, Hetty may probably suffer from borderline personality disorder, and I think this movie kind of like depicts that in that kind of way, because of the fact that her real name isn't really Hetty Carlson. Her real name actually is Ellen Besh. And the reason why she is drove into insanity goes way back to when she was 9 years old, when she lost her twin sister in a drowning accident, and she just never has been the same. And the only reason why that Hetty Carlson gets into Allison Jones's life is because Hetty thought that she found the perfect person to replace her deceased twin sister, and she didn't seem to want to let go. So by killing Sam, killing her dog, and killing practically anyone that's involved in Allison's life, she thought that she could do anything she can to protect her investment. And Allison was her investment. Allison was her reassurance. But when Allison decides that she doesn't want Hetty anymore as her roommate, then it becomes a full-blown, climactic, epic battle between these two rivalries. Well, ever since, I guess you could say, 1987's Fatal Attraction, many of these psycho thrillers have been cropping up at the time. I mean, we've had Misery with Oscar-winning actress Kathy Bates. We had The Hand That Rocks the Cradle. My God, Rebecca De Mornay. She was really badass. And then we had The Good Son with the Kid from Hell. And then we had one of my personal favorites, Unlawful Entry, with Ray Liotta as the cop from Hell. So we had a lot of these characters from Hell movies kind of like coming into the movie theaters back in the 1990s. There was a whole lot more. There was Pacific Heights, Basic Instinct, you know. These movies were the in thing back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I think that to good effect, they actually ended up replacing those stupid slasher movies that Freddy and Jason and Michael Myers were doing back in the 80s. And I actually always had enjoyed the psycho thrillers more than the slasher films, because it it embodies a more intriguing character study. And we get to sort of examine more of the complexities of the human psyche, and we get to get a further backstory of many of them. Some were successful, at least more than others. Some have been like mediocre, and then there was some that was just utter crap. Okay, the common thread of most of these stories focuses on the realms of predominantly middle-class suburbanites putting their trust in someone at first, and then before you know it, the person who you've trusted becomes not who or not who he or she is cut out to be. And then before you know it, when you least expect it, the trusted ones have plots that go as far as to get what they want, even if it means to kill someone along the way, with no remorse or conscience of what they're doing. To me, these kind of thrillers are actually a lot more fun to watch than these slasher films that Jason and Freddy had done in the 80s. At least in Single White Female, the message is that what you may see in the papers may look good in writing, only to realize that you are better off without what you just purchased. And I think Allison actually learns the valuable lesson. You know the old, don't count your chickens before they hatch? In the case of Allison, she thought she would have found, at least a little comfort in a roommate. That way so she doesn't live in her big, expensive New York City luxurious apartment alone. And that she had found someone who she could, spend time with. Not necessarily, get involved in a lesbian relationship or anything like that, but, just to have someone else. That way so, you don't have to live in a big apartment all by yourself. I mean, nobody wants to be lonely. Even loners would not want to spend their days and nights being alone. Sometimes it's nice to have another human face, someone to talk to by the end of the day. And Allison gladly took Hetty in, but she got much more than she bargained for. She never expected Hetty would be what you call a head case, which I believe the name Hedra derives from, because I think the name Hedra comes from the term head case, and unfortunately she personifies a classic head case. She has a bit of a scarred past that has never been expunged, and her scarred past continues to follow until it manifests into epic proportions. And I think that was actually played quite effectively. Now, do I think that Single White Female was a great movie? No. There were flaws in this movie, and I will be more than happy to explain to you where the flaws come from. As a psychological thriller, Single White Female was not as good as the ones Alfred Hitchcock directed. But hey, it's still a fun movie to enjoy, and it succeeds quite well in this subgenre. So where did it went wrong? Where it went wrong was that it was just too by the numbers in terms of its delivery. Director Barbet Schroeder provides the shock value much too early in the film that we never get the time to savor the moments. The dog's unfortunate demise, the subliminal messages about the broken iron grill, and the voices culminating from the apartment vents. Yes, sometimes I think that after Jennifer Jason Leigh's character of Hetty Carlson, the next creepy character in this movie has to go to Peter Friedman's Graham Knox, who seems to listen in through the vents of his apartment. I mean, come on now. It's like the guy, okay, maybe he is portrayed as a gay guy, but is he 100% gay? I mean, he's listening in and spying on everything that goes on between Allison and Hetty. Makes me kind of convinced that he might probably have some eroticism towards the female sex himself. So it makes you wonder. Maybe he's infatuated on both ends of the ship. The more diabolical scenes stem from was when Hetty cuts her hair, dyes it from brunette to ginger, and starts wearing Allison's clothes. It was strange, it was erotic, but it was also quite effective, especially when she performs oral sex towards Sam, who's oblivious to the fact that it's not Allison that's seducting him. And then before you know it, he meets his demise. But then there are moments where it can be quite surreal. When the stab in the head by a stiletto shoe, it displays an awkward scene which feels very cartoon-like and seems kind of out of place in a thriller like this. I mean, the splatter moments seem more cartoony and not very, very effective, but more awkward. The Victorian, however, though, I will have to give credit out to Luciano Tovoli for the Victorian apartment setup. Is actually quite effective and it fits well in the genre. I'll even give some credit out to Howard Shore for the music score. The script by Don Roos, based on the adaptation of the movie by novel, I should say, by John Lutz, was also quite good, as, you know, he pretty much put in most of the scenes. He put everything in, every nook and cranny from the book, because then it's just, you know, like reenacting the story. You don't have to take every scene from the book, and he doesn't do that. But at least he puts in the important stuff from the book into the movie, and for that I give him an applause just as well. Even though she comes from a long list of A-list movie performers, which include in her family, which includes her relatives like Peter, Henry, and Jane Fonda, Bridget Fonda was unfortunate that she was never able to reach the pinnacle of her family legacy. And for many reasons why, kind of stems from this movie. Although, you know, in order for a psychological thriller to work, both the protagonist has to ignite some interest towards its audience, not just have the bad guys do their evil thing to enlighten us. We want to be just as equally enthralled with the protagonist in his or her duties. Not just let the antagonist steal the show. And this is where the weakness is. Bridget Fonda's character, Allison Jones, is quite cold, and she's not really that effective in her role. Whereas, by contrast, Jennifer Jason Leigh fares a lot better as the evil roommate Hetty. And then when she dresses like Allison and becomes her evil duplicate, that's when her insanity explodes, and we're all anticipating as to what she's going to do next. If we're just gonna rest on our laurels towards letting the antagonist do all the work and the protagonist doing very little to excite us, then that drops down, then the points drop down quite substantially in a movie like this. But however, the only weakness towards Jennifer Jason Leigh's character is when her twitch and her nervous delivery sometimes does get a bit grating at times. But I think it is still also to good effect, and it doesn't hinder her character that much, or her performance. So as a whole, Single White Female to this day stands out as a good psycho thriller, but not necessarily the best, but does have an angle towards this genre that is original, and it stands out, of course, 5 times better than these mindless slasher films that were popular in the 80s. The acting is not the best, but it's not the worst either, even though there were some really engaging scenes. Its formula was still by the numbers in its delivery. But I think Barbet Schroeder improved quite a bit in later years. In 2002, he would direct another psycho thriller titled Murder by Numbers, which was, of course, kind of like an homage to the actual Leopold and Loeb murders. In 2005, there spawned a sequel called Single White Female 2, The Psycho, where Kristen Miller and Brooke Burns play similar characters to the one that Bridget Fonda and Jennifer Jason Leigh fared. And if you ever get a chance to watch it, do me a favor, spare yourselves for that one. There was a reason why it was direct for video and didn't come out in theaters. So, if in all that, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would have to give it a 6. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you want to subscribe to my channel, feel free to do so. If you wish to write back some feedback, feel free. Just remember, be kind, be courteous, don't be rude. And I will be back again with another review. So until next time, this is Eric Corrupt Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.